So I'm Emily, I'm a purpose and calling coach, and this month we've been talking about finding time to do all the things. And so this week I want to talk about creating space, decluttering, essentialism, people call it all kinds of things. Books have been written on it, and you might have your own zone or lingo that you use for it, but it's creating that breathing room instead of running yourself day to day, and your to-do list is always longer than your day. Your spending is always longer than your budget. You're just willing yourself to get everything done instead of letting it flow from within. And there's this tension, this balance that we can live in. And so just want to talk about that, and this week we'll just share some little bits along the day, and hopefully you find some inspiration or some aha moments that give you some clarity on where you can create space without spending a lot of time on it, or being purposeful with the time that you spend. So in creating space, we're talking about a few different areas. So one of them would be mentally. One of the podcasts I love is Story Brand with Donald Miller and JJ Peters, and I love their chemistry. And I remember a couple of months ago, JJ, I guess he was talking about when he was in a season writing his book, and he said that he could not have written what he wrote without going for his hour-long walk every morning. And for that season that he was writing, that's the space that he needed. He couldn't just sit down straight and write. He couldn't, that was just the space he needed to gather his thoughts, to let inspiration come, to get focused and just get away from all the other voices and noises that he was competing with in the world. And that really stood out to me because I have found the same thing. I am a contemplator. If you know the Gallup's Find Your Strengths book, if you've ever read that, my strength is introspective. So in order for me to actually feel a lot of clarity and energy, I've learned I need to create space to just think and reflect and be quiet and be alone and just let I call it percolating, my thoughts percolate, and just see what is in my subconscious, what are the observations I've had, and be more intentional with that. So there's different ways you can do that. Exercise physiologically helps you do that, but if you're watching videos, exercise videos all the time, then you haven't created the space for that, right? So nature walks, I'm not even going to get to the science of that today, but nature walks, you don't need the science to know that feels amazing. Or maybe you're into meditation or prayer or just sitting by the lake and letting just the water soothe your soul. Maybe it's journaling for you. But whatever that is, space away from all the noises. For a season of my life, that was my commute, driving in the car, turning off the music and just being purposeful with my thoughts. I'd love when I would have to go see my sister, and I'd have, before I got married, I'd have like 4 hours or 3 hours in the car by myself, and I looked forward to that time because it was just time I could create. And I know when you have a family, that can get crazy and there's less time, but that means that it's even more important because I know you're taking care of everybody, and everybody has demands, and there can be interruptions, at any time. And so for the health of yourself and your family, your kids, even your values in parenting, or even in your friendships and your productivity, it's so important to be able to take that time and find that space, get in the rhythm of creating that space mentally, for your soul, for your heart, for your mind, just to be. And so another area where you can create space is in your environment. And I'm probably not going to say her name right, but one of the people that has inspired me in the last year and love following her story and her blog is Ali Kazaza. I can put that in the notes later. but she literally, she was into minimalism before the Netflix documentary came out, before it was trending, basically. She started minimalism, and she just stumbled across it, cleaning up her kids' toys. And she was depressed. She was not healthy. Her family was suffering. Her health was suffering. And she was in a really bad place. And basically came to the point where she ended up decluttering one room at a time and felt immense freedom. Like, she literally was set free from depression because she decluttered her entire house and got rid of half of what she owned and decided to live by that. So much to the fact that now that is her whole business, because she wrote a blog on Huffington Post about her story, and it went viral, and all of a sudden she had these people landing in her lap asking, how do I get this too? And so that is something I have not conquered yet, but I've been working towards. I've read a couple books, and bit by bit I've emptied half my closet. I've let go of things I've been holding on to. My husband says my bookshelves are not one of them yet, but I have gotten rid of a lot of books. Just because and I posted that picture earlier today of the garden, and to me that was just a little example of how it feels differently. There's actually scientific studies that say you are physiologically different mentally. There's things that get set off in your brain when you walk into a room with clutter, and there is a certain peace that your soul experiences when you walk into a room that is clutter-free and peaceful and organized. And you know that innately. The problem is getting there, right? And I know. Right now we're talking about finding the time to do all of the things. And it takes time to declutter. Like, all that stuff, where does it come from? Right? Every time I move, I'm like, how did I get so much stuff, and why do I have this? And then your mind gets cluttering, wondering, how do I decide what to get rid of? This is overwhelming, right? It's hard. So maybe that's something that you don't have time to do. But one of the things that is a wise principle to follow is, what are the things that you keep doing over and over? So what are the things you keep picking up over and over? How many loads of wash you keep washing over and over because you're not sure if it's clean or dirty, or there's piles of clothes, I'm guilty of this, sitting around, because they're not clean, but they're not dirty, and so they don't have a spot, and it's just clutter everywhere. What are those things that you keep dealing with over and over, and how can you decide to deal with it once? Find a system to deal with it once so it has a place to belong. So if you invest that time now, you're freeing up yourself pockets of time for the future. See, there's immediate pain, right? That you're feeling overwhelmed dealing with all of this, but there's future success. There's future freedom in your time. So those are one of the things we're going to explore this week and touch on, or what are some of those things that you deal with in your space, in your time, in your productivity, that you keep handling over and over and over. That we can, if we spend the extra time now learning a system, setting up a system, hiring someone to set up a system for us, then in the long run, how much time will that save you in the week? Something to think about. So the other place you can create space is in your money. And so mentally, one of the biggest stresses that is out there is debt in finances and living paycheck to paycheck, or not feeling like you have enough, and that's taxing. So there's this balance between this contentment, but yet, how do you not stay stuck with where you are either, and owning that. And so there's principles, and we won't get into that now, but do you have space and margin in your budget, in your finances, of how you spend money or how you want to, so that you can give as much and you're not feeling totally strapped every time you want to give to someone, or to save when you want to. Are you living within your means, or are you constantly exceeding that? And like I said, there's people that write books and courses on that alone, because it's so powerful in the story that you tell yourself around that. And that's one of the things that I've struggled with too, that I've made lots of breakthrough this year, is how do you move forward beyond that mindset, and realizing what mindsets I've lived with my whole life that I just accepted, and I realized, oh, those people who are exceeding, they don't think that way about money. They think differently. And so changing your mindset about that in the first place, and setting up your budget and sticking to it, and finding a way to find your freedom from debt, making that a goal, that will create space as well, right? That will create space from your stress and from limitations. And so if that's for you, there's teachings, just message me or voice that in the comments, and I can give you some resources if you're still trying to conquer that area of your life. There's lots of good stuff out there that can help you get started with that. So another area is in your calendar. And probably when I was in my late 20s is when I really mastered this as a single, because I could live, I would work late, I didn't have anybody to be accountable with, I had people wanting to spend time with me, and I had to figure it a way, but yet I'm an introvert, and I needed lots of alone time for me to feel refreshed, yet I found my sense of purpose in spending time with people. So how could I figure out, how do you say no to some relationships? How do you not feel guilty about that? And so there's the relationship, creating space in your relationships for the people who, so how do you spend time with the people that you want to become? Or are other people choosing who your relationships are? Does that make sense? So, you feel obligated to spend your time with your family all the time because, maybe you're Italian, or that's your family's thing, is you have to spend time with them all the time, so you don't want to make any waves. You've got friendships, and maybe you grew up with them, and that's just the thing you do. Every Thursday night you go out for a coffee, or you have your girls' night every month, and your life starts changing, you start changing, but they haven't, and you start realizing, this isn't fit anymore. So are there people in your life that they're taking up space from who you want to be and how you want to spend they're holding you back actually from who you're meant to be and living out your calling, just because it always was, or because you didn't feel like you had a strong enough reason to say no to, right? You're supposed to be nice and love everybody. So does that mean you have to spend time with them all the time? That's something you have to decide. But if something doesn't feel right, or it feels off, that's worth exploring. How can you create space? Because are those people who maybe are keeping you stuck from being or doing what you're called to do and be, then they're taking up the space for new people in your life that could actually propel you to that next space, to that next season that you're looking for. And so how can you create space in your relationships for new ones, to release you from ones that are tying you back to the person that you used to be? And so so that was relationships, but now calendar. In your calendar, there's all kinds of stuff, right? There's the things you sign your kids up for. There's running your kid around to daycare. For me, it's like half the time it's finding someone to watch my child because my regular system didn't work out. Or it's maybe work schedule got shifted around. Extracurricular things. There's your workouts and your meal plan, like everything that takes a block of time. Your shopping, and some of it's mundane time, and we talked a little about that earlier this month, and some of it is stuff you want to do, basically in your calendar, is there space for you to delight in life? That when the Bible originally talked about Sabbath, there's this whole concept around it was rest, but not just rest from work. It was a time to delight in life and delight in your freedom, that you're not a slave to life, you're not a slave to things you own, but you get to just delight in what has been created for you, what you've created, your whole values, your family, and so some of what crowds that space mentally or emotionally that I find is when things take longer than I think they will, and it starts invading that space of time that I really value. Say the time I set aside for relationships, those margin times to just be me and delight, or to relax, or to read that book that I was so looking forward to, or spending time with my family, and all of a sudden something crowds that out. And now it's not just time that's being crowded. Emotionally, I'm starting to feel resentful, or I'm starting to feel guilty. And so the calendar thing starts affecting you emotionally. And so where can you intentionally set aside that time and guard it with your life? So you know, this is my time that I get rejuvenated, either every day or every week, quarterly or annually. What are those times that you set aside? And you guard them, not just because they're excess that you're guarding, but because without those margins, a lot of times you don't have anything to give to your relationships, to your purpose, to your calling, your creativity, your energy. All of those things stem from that margin time where you can just be and you can reflect and align yourself. So where in your calendar do you need to just block off that space, no matter what, no compromising, and be so conscious of that? I give you permission to do that. If you need permission, I give you permission to do that. And a lot of these things, if there's a block where you feel, but these are the things that work out with my one-on-one clients. We dig deeper with that. What's behind feeling guilty? And we start unpacking, the beliefs behind that. Because another place you can create space is your outlook, your perspective. Are there beliefs? Are there stories you're telling yourself? Are there things that you've just lived with your whole life you thought were normal? You thought it was normal, so maybe your family didn't make a lot of money. It was one story my coach told where her family didn't make a lot of money. And so she had to bust through some of those mindsets in prejudice, if you will, because she all of a sudden started making loads of money and having loads of success. But the story she'd been told her whole life was just, we're a poor family. We just work to make ends meet. So it could be anything that you're going through, that you have beliefs that are holding you back. Either maybe you have a belief around success and you're actually scared of success, and that's holding you back. So you're actually sabotaging yourself with your time, in some weird way that doesn't make sense if you actually put words to it. But subconsciously, maybe you're sabotaging yourself from that one thing that you should do. Maybe it's hiring a housekeeper, and there's a block around that, and you realize it's this belief if you were to pare back. Maybe it is, you won't take a vacation because that feels like, you don't deserve that, or that's for this type of person and I'm not that type of person. So there are belief systems that are actually crowding your outlook space, and you could have freedom from that to stop resisting, spending energy resisting or excusing or self-sabotaging before you even know. So like I said, those are some of the things. Journal about it. It takes some reflection to figure that out. I listen to sermons or podcasts sometimes and then just start journaling those feelings when they come up. Or I do that with one of my one-on-one clients. So if you want to hop on the call and just talk about that further, we can do that, for 20 or 30 minutes. Just let me know. I would be happy to do that with you, because I've seen the breakthroughs in my clients. I know the ones that I've had on myself, when all of a sudden just verbalizing it, realizing grieving something actually gave me the space to invite new things in. It was just taking up mental space. It was somehow crowding out my soul because I was grieving. I wasn't allowing myself to grieve, a failure, a disappointed expectation. And it was taking up space internally, which meant that I wasn't able to put it to life. I wasn't allowed to have that freedom in real life. And so sometimes it feels bizarre to actually verbalize those things, but it's reality. There's so much of it. Our physical, what we're trying to accomplish in a week, is held back by a space that a belief is holding that isn't serving us anymore of who we want to be and what we're called to do. So I hope you find freedom from that in some way or other, and you can always ask God to help you with that too. So those are some of the areas I can think of. Also, there's social media, or the time you spend online, the time you spend dealing with emails. In my earlier note today, I asked you to, and if you missed that one, today what I'd love to hear from you is, where do you find yourself? You just feel like you're stuck, you're stuck in creating that space. So maybe it is, if it's mentally, or there's certain thoughts, the yeah buts in your mind, or, I'm not this type of person, or I keep doing this over and over and over again. Why am I here? Well, let me review the different places you can create space for yourself to have the energy, inspiration, or the productivity and the things that you want to get done. So mentally, in your solitude and reflection, and in your creativity, in your environment, in your finances, in your calendar, in your relationships, in your outlook, and in your online, and just the everyday, the business tasks that you have to get done. Whatever that looks like in your style of business. How can you create things to do? So we will talk about that this week. Looking forward to you guys jumping in the conversation. I want to hear your ideas. There's probably lots of areas where you guys have nailed this better than I have. And so I think we can learn from each other. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about you guys and where you thrive and where you're struggling this week. And I hope that this continually helps you create space so that you can live on fire for the world changing that you are called to do in your little space, because it takes all of us being truly who we are and what we are called to do to make a beautiful difference in this world. You have a purpose and a calling that's unique to you, and this world wouldn't be the same without it. So join the conversation. Thanks for coming. We'll see you around.